And in addition to that, we have the grand totals that have been brought to us, which is always interesting to me to see if they match the totals I came up with.
Well, if they don't, then it's our fault.
Yeah.
Because we read them off wrong. So here are your finals for Loudoun County, 15 out of 15 precincts reporting. In the Republican presidential primary, Donald J. Trump wins 6,053 votes. That's 96.2% of the vote. Joe Walsh with 60 votes, Bill Weld with 67, and 113 voters were uncommitted. For assessor of property, Mike Campbell, 5,717 votes will win that. Circuit Court Clerk for the unexpired term, the winner is Steve Harrelson, 4,186 votes. That's 69.8% of the votes. Mike Newman, 1,810 votes, getting just over 30% of the vote there. So Steve Harrelson is the winner in that race. Now for the Democratic primary for President of the United States, the winner in Loudoun County is Joe Biden, 1,288 votes. That comes in at 38.69% of the total vote. Going down the list, Michael Bloomberg, 746 votes, so that's 22%. Pete Buttigieg with 179 votes. Amy Klobuchar with 178 votes. Bernie Sanders, 637 votes. That's just over 19% of the vote. And Elizabeth Warren with 244 votes on the evening. So Joe Biden with 38.69% of the votes wins the Democratic primary here in Loudoun County.
Thank you very much, Russell. So that covers all the votes that have been cast today. We are privileged to now to have the property assessor with us, Mr. Mike Campbell, who we projected long ago was going to win his race, and we're glad to know that our exit pollers have done a good job and have come across with the right answer.
We'll double their pay.
Yeah, congratulations, Mike, with a total of 5,717 votes. That's quite a compliment from the electorate.
I'm very humbled to get the complimentary vote today, and very appreciative to each and every one of the voters that made it to the polls today. We had some bad things going on across the state with the storms, but the day turned out to be absolutely beautiful in Loudoun County, and the vote is exciting for me, so I get to continue my job for the next 4 years.
Is this your
This is my third term. It'll be my third term, so obviously I'll run unopposed in the general in the fall. So this is exciting, and just appreciate everybody. And you guys have been here since 5 o'clock, I believe, broadcasting. So you've had a long day, and appreciate you all staying up to date on all the returns coming out.
The exit pollers I told you about have just whispered in my ear that they're projecting you to win the general election too.
You keep listening to your people.
Mike, we a lot of us don't know anything about the property assessor, except we get these tax notices that say what our property assessed at and what it's, they give us a total number and then a percentage of that number, and somehow in there we work out the owing tax. How does that work?
So basically my job comes down to valuing each and every piece of property in the county, and we have a team of 6 in the office, and we will put a set of eyes on each and every property in the county. It takes us about 3 years to do that, and then every 4th year we do a countywide reappraisal. So each year we have an appraisal, and then there's state statutes that give us a classification. So commercial properties at 40% and residential's at 25%, and we get to an assessment. That assessment is multiplied by the tax rate that the county commission adopts, and then you also have your city council for the inside property is Lenoir City and Loudoun City. And that's what generates the tax bill, the dreaded tax bill that funds our government operation. So we work with the city councils and county commission to project what our tax roll is, and that tax roll is passed along to the groups that will create the tax bill. So it's just a big fancy spreadsheet that that they put in on the tax file, and we send out, I think it's about 36,000 parcels in Loudoun County.
36. I was going to ask you how many different parcels there are. 36. So to take a simple example, if you have a house that's worth $200,000 and you said the residential assessment is 25% of that?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So then you get to 50,000.
Yes.
And you multiply that times the tax rate per 100, I suppose.
That's correct.
Okay. And then we go to the trustee's office and everything's happy the rest of the time.
What have you seen, Mike, from your first term till this now with 36,000 parcels?
36,000 parcels.
Has that jumped dramatically?
So as you'll recall, I came in 2011 under an appointment, won my first election in 12. Our reappraisal cycle was 2009, so you could say I inherited a valuation, and then 13, after the next year following the election, was our next reappraisal. Well, the 07, 08 timeframe was the peak of the market, and we had high values, and we basically continued through that process, and it wasn't a pleasant experience for a lot of people. 13, we saw a devaluation, and so now we reappraised in 17, we saw an increase, and the market that we're seeing right now, things are still increasing. Labor cost of construction, new construction is appreciating significantly in Loudoun County, and from what I understand, other counties that surround us.
You know, you often hear when those notices go out to tell you what your property's been assessed at, that people will sometimes say, I think that's too high. What is the process then for those people that want to appeal that?
So when a taxpayer sees a notice or inquires on it, obviously we want to hear from the taxpayer, because what we have on the record, we're all human and we can make mistakes. So if we key something incorrect, we want to hear from the taxpayer. That's the first point of contact and checking out what we have on record. If we say we've got your house at 3,000 square feet and it's 2,000 square feet, we've got an error, and we want to make that right. We want to make all 36,000 records as accurate as possible. When we send out the change notice, there is an appeal procedure that goes to the County Board of Equalization. They only meet in the first week of June, first week to 2 weeks in June. And so that's an opportunity for a taxpayer to be heard by a 5-member board. They will get a decision. If they don't like that, they can proceed to the state level, which goes in front of a judge. We call it administrative law judge, and that law judge will hear their case on the merits of what they deem to be correct, and the facts of the property. So if it's land value or improvement value, if there's something that's that the homeowner has that we're not aware of, and that's why I go back to that first step is critical, that we want to work with each and every taxpayer to get the record as correct as possible. And so we can go down that process, and the laws have changed some, that the appeals process has changed. But after you elevate from the ALJ, you can go to Assessment Appeals Commission, and it just goes, there's an opportunity for the taxpayer to be heard. And in that process, sometimes it's deemed to be painful, but it's a great way to be heard and have a chance to be heard, and not just locally. Obviously, I go back to that's the first step, and I think a critical step. But you have a chance to be heard by an administrative law judge. You get to have a chance chance in front of the Assessment Appeals Commission, and that commission can be made up anywhere from 3 to 5 members on that board. And most people won't get to that stage. It's more complicated, and typically you'll have more lawyers involved.
But the property owners, I'm sure, are always welcome to come to your office and discuss if they have a problem with their assessment, and at least get started there and make contact with one another.
Absolutely. We invite each and every property owner, taxpayer to come into our office. We run open records as the state requires, but I feel like my staff and myself will go beyond what is required to clearly show where we're coming from, where your property's valued, how it's valued, and have nothing to hide to say this is where we come up with our basis. And again, we're human. We make mistakes, but we want to narrow that error margin as much as we can, so that we want to be as accurate as possible.
I'm curious on the 36,000 roughly parcels. Does that follow with any correlation to the population growth? In other words, have you seen the number of parcels increase over your last 6 or 8 years?
The 36,000 parcels, I'll say, is pretty flat.
Okay.
And there's some quirkiness about that. We've got a few subdivision developments, and so you'll pick up a few parcels. But we had a tremendous amount of undeveloped parcels that were on the record, so you could build a house. So new construction is where you're going to see your boost in population, but not necessarily a parcel increase.
Gotcha.
So we're going to have some parcel increases, and then you'll also have parcels that are combined. So you may have 4 lots, and you want to build a house on the middle of 4 lots, and planning, so we want you to combine those 4. So we have lots that we reduce record count into 1 so that you can build a house, and then that might correlate into a population increase if they're living outside the county, build a house on 4 lots, and you have a new family in. So
interesting.
It's not directly related. So I think I've heard anywhere 50 plus to 55,000 population in Loudoun County, and I think we're in the process of the 2020 Census Bureau taking to see what our actual numbers will be for this upcoming time period.
Well, Mike, we want to congratulate you again on your victory tonight. We appreciate you taking time to visit with us for a few minutes.
Well, I appreciate that, the kind words, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And again, I go back to, I know you guys have a long day, and I appreciate you guys being here early and keeping the listeners out there up to date on what the election results are.
Well, thank you very much.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Russell, you have some updated state numbers?
All right, quickly taking a look at some of the nationwide, and then we'll go to those state numbers. As we said just a few minutes ago, Joe Biden was declared the winner by several of the news agencies in the state of Tennessee. We've talked about some of the races. Bernie Sanders with a lead right now in Texas, but the prediction is still that Biden would probably win there. Sanders with a very small lead in Maine, but they're still thinking Biden would be the leader. Sanders with a lead in Colorado, and still, let's see, just a change. Yep, still Texas still looking in the way of Bernie Sanders. But now let's take a look at those totals for in the state of Tennessee, as Joe Biden has pulled away to a pretty big lead overall in the state of Tennessee. Biden with 89,093 votes, Sanders with 61,182, Bloomberg with 47,345, Warren 22,982, and Buttigieg with 12,417. So Biden, right now, after it was a pretty nip and tuck race in the early few minutes of it, with a strong lead here in the state of Tennessee.
All right. Thank you. We're happy to have with us now Steve Harrelson, who has been victorious tonight in his race for Circuit Court Clerk. So congratulations, Steve.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you taking some time. I know you've had a long day, probably. One of several long days.
It's been a long day. Everybody's making fun fun of my red face from all the sun. I thought from 8 to 10 o'clock this morning, when it was pouring down rain, you wouldn't think I'd be sunburned tonight. But we got all elements of the weather today for sure.
We did, but it was a good election day. We had good turnout of voters, and we appreciate, we don't say that enough, but we appreciate all the people that do go out and take the time to vote, whether they did it early or today. Help us out a little bit, Steve. I know what does the circuit court clerk have charge of?
Circuit court clerk takes care of all the documents for the court system here in Loudoun County. I've got a staff of 20 that work. We've got about 15 that work at General Sessions and 5 that work at Circuit Court down in Loudoun. Of course, we used to be housed in the courthouse until the courthouse fire last April, and then we transitioned from there to the old Loudoun Utilities Board building, and that's where we're operating court and taking care of all the court documents for Circuit Court now. So, but it's been a challenge since the courthouse fire. It's added more responsibilities as Circuit Court clerk, because I've kind of joked and saying I need to get an enclosed trailer and put a mobile court system on it, because we're having to travel to 2 or 3 different areas in the city of Loudoun to hold court sometimes, according to how big the court is, whether it's a jury trial or something. We can handle this there at our building now, which is a smaller courtroom. So it's definitely made a bigger challenge on us as far as keeping the court system running.
Yeah,
It's kind of been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It's been a crazy last 10, 11 months, that's for sure. But, I've got to compliment my staff. I mean, they're just awesome, the job that they do and the experience that they have. And making this transition would have been so much bigger of a headache if I didn't have a great staff that jumps in there and does their job and makes a transition and does the things that we need to do to keep things moving.
How long had you been in office when the fire occurred?
I'd been there about 5 months.
I thought it was really quickly after you took office that you had this dumped on you. Get it done quickly.
I just barely got my feet wet good, and we were moving on with it. And then, of course, I'll always remember the courthouse fire date because it was on my birthday last year, April 23rd, 2019. And I just sat down and have dinner with my wife and some friends and got the call. And, of course, when I first got it, I thought they were kidding with me. And they were like, no, the courthouse is on fire. So by the time I got down there, it was a reality that we had a big disaster, big situation that we were dealing with.
Well, you'll probably, when you get to April 23rd of 2020, you'll probably feel like you aged more than a year.
Exactly. I'm sure I will.
Well, when you say you take care of the records for all the courts in Loudoun County, how many courts are the different courts that you're serving?
District-wide, we have a criminal court, which Judge Wicks comes in 3 times a year and has a criminal court in Loudoun County. And then Judge Pemberton handles our circuit court, our civil cases, and he's in here 3 months out of the year also. So that's the circuit office handles all the court system for those district judges. The other side, on the General Sessions side, we have Judge Sledge and Judge Dale that handle our court system there, and we do criminal court on Wednesdays. That's the big day that everybody notices how crowded it is there, and we also deal with juvenile, civil at General Sessions, probate, numerous different courts there at General Sessions at the Justice Center.
So there's a lot going on in your office.
It's a very big office every day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. We stay pretty busy.
Well, we appreciate the work you're doing, and we congratulate you on your victory tonight. And I know you want to get home and get some rest.
I sure do. It's been a long campaign season, a long day for sure, but I appreciate you having me out.
Are you taking the day off tomorrow?
Well, we've got to go out and get all the signs up, all the voters. I want to thank all the voters for coming out and voting, but also to tell them that we will get these signs up as quick as we can, so we'll get our county looking back the way it normally does.
Yeah, that stands out if they stay very long.
Exactly. My goal is to get them up as soon as possible.
Well, I hope it's a pretty day for you tomorrow.
Yeah, I do too.
You'll work on your tan some. Well, thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good to see you.
Well, we're getting close to being wrapped up, but Russell, you have any more information on the
So here's the latest statewide numbers in the Democratic primary. Joe Biden with 97,433 votes, now with over a 30,000 vote lead over Bernie Sanders with 66,184. Michael Bloomberg with 49,548. So I guess as the polls have started to move westward, the numbers have turned out very well for Joe Biden. So it's been a very good Super Tuesday for him.
As I've heard it said today, he's got, what is it, Joe Motion?
Yeah.
Joe Tovation or something like that. I knew that wasn't
Joe
a good
Minham, I
idea
guess.
when I started.
Joe Minham,
Joe Minham, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, it's definitely been the case. Sanders was still with a chance to win in a couple of states, but I guess that's the big story, is that Biden was almost put out to pasture last week. Last week until Saturday, and then he certainly had a surge here in the last little bit.
The pundits I saw too, even after winning South Carolina handily, was that, well, that's not going to translate to Super Tuesday necessarily, but that was also before Buttigieg. And,
so I think that's definitely been big. That's probably the best thing that could have happened for them to drop out early.
Yeah.
Well, let's review quickly for you the totals that we have in the main races. President Donald Trump, as everyone expected, won the Republican primary with 6,053 votes. Mike Campbell, again, as everyone expected, won the assessor of property race with 5,717 votes. In the circuit court clerk, you just heard from Steve Harrelson, the victor there, who has 4,186 votes, and Mike Newman, who ran a good race, 1,810 votes. In the Democrat primary, Russell has given you the statewide information. Loudoun County is very much like that. Joe Biden has 1,288 votes. Michael Bloomberg has 746 votes. Pete Buttigieg, 179 votes. Amy Klobuchar, just one vote short of that, with 178 votes. Bernie Sanders with 637 votes. And Elizabeth Warren with 244 votes. And the others are much smaller totals than that. But those are the key players in all of the races. And that's how Election Day, March the 3rd of 2020, goes in Loudoun County. Jack, I know you want to join me. We want to thank Russell for coming down to be with us tonight. It was nice to have a touch of class in this operation.
Touch of class, touch of professionalism, and a good old friend.
Well, it's been a joy to be here. Thanks for having me. Look forward to, hopefully, if you'll have me back for future elections.
We will.
Got a couple
appreciate you coming.
Yeah, it should be a fun election season.
We'll discuss the retirement benefits with Chip and get back.
Okay.
Well, I do good with pizza. I know you don't eat much pizza, but I do pretty good with pizza, so we'll plan that for next time.
Absolutely.
But Russell, thank you for coming down.
Thanks.
And
Been a joy.
Jim and Jack, thank you both for all you do for this, because I can't do it myself. I'm good at setting up equipment and making sure that other people can shine. So that's what we've done here tonight.
All right.